What does it really feel like to be lonely? Was there ever a moment in your life when you feel weak, anxious, sad, or afraid, and you long for someone to be around you, someone to lean on? Not just anyone, but someone who can really understand you, who doesn't judge you, who appreciates you, who supports and loves you unconditionally, no matter how imperfect you are. In those moments, you feel lonely when you're not sure who that person is, or that someone is no longer accessible. And what if all of a sudden you're the only human left on the planet? 7.8 billion minus you all just vanished. Would you be trapped in perpetual loneliness? Because there will never be anyone who can be around you to understand you, to appreciate and love you. What is then the purpose and meaning of your life? Is there a way out not to feel lonely? Or perhaps you would no longer feel the need to be seen, understood, or appreciated by others because you're the only one left in the world to judge yourself and to compete with. And perhaps you wouldn't feel the need to belong either, or feel exchanged, because you are the group, the community, the whole. You belong to yourself, and you will no longer feel the fear of missing out. That's why we're together here and now to co-create, redesign for the vision of less loneliness in the world. Are you ready? Are you ready to reimagine things, not just being objects, but also allies to help us feel less lonely, even when we're all alone? And in this process of co-creation, are you, our dear contestants and guests, ready to express and share authentically about yourself? Let go of unnecessary control. Help us experience you as the real and authentic you. Well, it's the real you whom we want to see, understand, and appreciate. Discoveries and innovation are a result of trial and error, and failing is a necessary part of discovering. So be you and no rush. Thank you for being part of this collective creation. Thank you for being part of a collective flow. We intend to converse, create, and compete. Meanwhile, we shall flow freely without rushing or judging. May the spirit of creative freedom and authenticity be with you. You may now open your eyes. So welcome everyone to Not Just a Thing, a special slot machine game that generates one crisis, two things, three constraints, hosted by Mickey and Ting.
Hey, Ting.
Hi. Mickey is going to share the winning idea from last week.
Yeah, can we pull that up, Corey? Last week, we had some fun exploration, and the winning idea was neat. It was actually about kind of how do we connect with each other, and Ada Lee came up with the idea. She's from Beworks, which is a lab up in Toronto, and it was actually quite fascinating. It was this notion of how could we connect, and she thought, what if when you go to the restroom, maybe this is in your own home, you're sort of you're asked to maybe leave a reflection or a note for someone else, and then go ahead to the next slide. When you're going to the restroom, you chose this reflection, kind of the way that Ting just chose like some music for us, and Ting just shared a little bit of her sort of reflection on what she'd love you to think about. What if when you sat down, you got someone else's that was shared before? So it's this notion of you've gotten someone else's reflection. And actually, when you pull off the toilet paper, there's a little 3D printer, of course, or something, or a line printer in there. So that as you pull it off, it's actually sending you messages from those other people who've been there, your other members of your family. And so it was just kind of a playful way of saying, in this thing that everybody has to do, how about if we could take a moment and sort of leave a little message in the bottle for someone else, maybe a little music or a little good thought of reflection. It was really fun.
That's such a fun idea. So congratulations, Ada from Beworks. You know, Mickey, I invented, my friend Spencer and I we actually co-created a music game during the pandemic time because we wanted to connect with each other without spending too much time doing Zoom calls. So it was a Spotify game. And Corey, if you don't mind going to the next frame, we each of us would choose. So I would start picking a piece of music, and he would reply by picking a piece of music that shares something in common with it. And he would guess. You know, I would have to guess what is the commonality, and then vice versa. So it goes on, and it's called tit for tat. And that commonality can be like lyrics. Can be the title of the song, can be the beat, the instruments used, and I ended up trying with different friends and family member, and in particular, my father-in-law is quite an introverted person. So usually when we do Zoom call, even if it's once every 2 weeks, he would just disappear after 1 minute or two, right? So it's very difficult for us. But in person, he's really lovely, or has a lot to share. So I invited him, and because he's a big music fan, we ended up almost having a daily interaction. And see here, I have a screenshot on the most right panel. He was looking at a tango song, because tango was my passion. He looked up sort of another song that shared 5 things in common with the song I picked. You know, and I was really touched because he obviously spent like an hour looking through all the tango music. That
really figure out how to find why and what you care about. I love this idea. So, what did you call the game?
We call it tit for tat, of course. You know, in a good way. So when we say tit, and the other person say tat when they reply with a song, and so forth. And
because it's also like you're not quite sure what part of the familiarity or similarity the other person will find, so it can really go off into crazy genres or different kinds of things just because maybe it's the same first name of the singer or something. That's really nice. Absolutely. It's kind of funny because it's like you've got to decode what your family member thinks.
Yeah, and you're going to be sharing something also that you love, right? And sometimes I cannot help and say, this is one of my favorite songs. Even if and I try to find like bending sometimes the criterion of like sharing something in common to kind of share that. Okay, so
and this was just something that you heard about, or you made it?
No, we created that game. Yeah, we just trying it out.
And so for those of you out there that are maybe in the design world or in the art world, in the 1920s and 30s, the Dadists that later became the Surrealists that informed a lot of the modern art movement, André Breton and people in the Dadaist movement came up with this idea called a species of consequences. And the very first thing they did was a poem where the first person wrote just a line or a word and then folded it over and handed it to somebody else. And then they had to write the next line. And when they opened it up, something was created that neither one of them could have come up with. And that's what you just did, Ting. You did a species of consequence. You kind of gave a little seed and then someone had to do it. This game is called The Exquisite Corpse as well, because that was the first poem. The exquisite corpse will drink the new wine. And it's actually a very powerful way of not having to start from scratch. Like, oh, what music do I want? Oh no, Ting gave me a piece of music and now I can play with it. So it's more like it bootstraps creativity in a playful way. And it can't be done alone. It has to be done with other people, which is really fun. Nice, Ting. I love it.
And so we have 2 wonderful guests today. Let's bring them up.
Hello.
Hey.
Good to see you. Who are you? I want to just sort of ask both of you, and we'll start with Steve. Steve, can you tell us who you are in one sentence, or who you think of yourself as?
I dream big about building health into everyday life again.
That's why you said dreamer as your.
And Steve, you've got an amazing effort right now called Building H. Can you just say a word or two or sentence about that?
Yeah,
What is
yeah.
Building H?
So without getting too deep into it, it's the idea that health shouldn't be an afterthought. It shouldn't be something that we all struggle to do, but should be actually woven deeply into the fabric of everyday life. And so it's a small project with giant ambitions, which is really about trying to catalyze innovation in how we eat and how we sleep and how we get from place to place, how we socialize, how we entertain ourselves. But really doing all of that from the perspective of how do we sort of center health and well-being as we innovate in those areas.
Steve, I remember the first time you shared this idea, and I just loved it. And I've really fallen in love with your newsletter and kind of getting updates from Building H. One of the things you said was, it seems like everybody is trying to teach us how to swim harder, and the rapids of water are getting like more aggressive, pushing us down. And what if we actually what if we actually changed the direction of the river? Like, what if we just actually tried to make it so that living life, you could be more healthy instead of it having to be, let's build Olympic swimmers for well-being or something.
Exactly. That's the central metaphor, I think of what we're talking about. So I appreciate hearing that from you.
Agnes, tell us just again, one sentence about who you are or who you think you are and what you're excited about right now.
Accelerating conscious evolution. How about that?
All right.
I'm trying to play. I'm just expanding possibly or digging deeper into the science, bringing some notions that will be helping people change. I think that the biggest barrier for us to consciously evolve is our resistance to change. And there's a biological reason for that. The body is competing for the energy with oxygen and sugar here to rewire the brains to accommodate the new habit. And that directly ties into your vision, Steve, about how the health would be perceived by the everyday human living as the essential part for everything. So I bring in this, I think my character is to demystify the human change and put it into the practice and into the hands of everybody, starting from individuals to the organizations and to the city scale.
And Agnes, where are you at, or how does it show up in the world? Like, what's the affiliation or organization you're doing this with, or what are the efforts? Like, give me an example of how this shows up in the world.
There are plenty of work that I've done, and there's a YouTube channel so people can look for the explanation. So at MIT Media Lab, so then we worked at the city scale, urban innovations, and then we also looked at how organizations would be leveraging technology and design for helping people to move around in cities in more eco-friendly and more healthy ways, which is bike to work. And then it's not only that you would be running a certain thing for a certain time and only the participants would be monitoring how they perform, but we were engaging companies, 14 companies, Google, Boston Children's Hospital, Volpe, have the screens in their offices. And you would see the ranking of these companies, not only based on the overall biking, but also per day, per company, and the enthusiasm, which would be the increase of the percentage of employees on that screen, which means it's not only the people that are biking, but everybody in the organization would see, oh, we are in the second place. Who is who is on top of us? Oh, Google. And the distance is just 3 miles per day. How about you tomorrow taking a bike? We
so
would
this
be
sounds a
getting
little bit like the cooperation, competition, kind of co-opetition stuff that we see from people like Dean Kamen and First Robotics and all the other places where it's sort of a playful, it's having fun, but friendly competition too.
Yep. The generally social fundamental reaction to seeing others. And there are competition, cooperation, and facilitation. That's another principle, which is usually kind of not that popular as social norms or social learning, but it's very effective. So you are seeing that it's happening now and with your organization and today, not 2 years ago in Australia.
Okay, perfect. Ting, what are we doing next?
Yeah, so this week we will actually still tackle the crisis of loneliness because it's way too critical not to give it enough attention. As you know, even before the pandemic, 2/3 of Americans always feel lonely. So the consequence of actual loneliness It's as bad as smoking to our heart health. So to kick us off, we would like to start with a very simple thought exercise. So imagine all the 8.8 billion humans minus you, all of a sudden, out of blue, have vanished, and you're left alone. You still have everything else. You can survive perfectly with unlimited resources. The question is, do you think you will feel more or less lonely? And what is that one human interaction, sex beside, that you would really, really miss? We'd love to invite you.
So the question is, would we be less lonely? Would we be more or less lonely if there were no people on Earth besides ourselves?
For yourself, you have to judge for yourself. We're not going to judge for other people.
Yeah, no, I'm guessing I would be more lonely without people in my life, to be sure. You know, I think what I would probably miss the most. It's a tough one, but I think it would probably be sort of the group dinner, right? Sort of the dinner party, the sharing food, a group sort of large enough that there perhaps more than one conversation, but everybody's sort of aware of each other, and I think it's music in the background. It's a beautiful time. So I would miss that.
What would be something that you could simulate? What would be a backup solution? What would be the closest to it, given that now you can't have humans?
Yeah, well, it's
in the place of a group dinner. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about replacing the group dinner, but the first thing that occurred to me, when sort of thinking about this idea of like, what would you do if you were the last person on Earth and you didn't want to be lonely? My first reaction is I would make friends with the animals. I remember a young woman years ago at a lunch talking when we were asking each other, like, what's one thing in the world that makes you really happy? And she said, interspecies friendship. That's a wonderful.
I don't know if you've all seen this documentary. We just watched it the other day, and it's called My Octopus Teacher.
Okay. Yeah, I have not seen it, but it's great.
I saw it. Yeah, I saw it on Netflix, whatever it was. But I didn't click on it, But we just watched it all the way through, and it is surprising and delightful and weird. And it's this lone person in the water every day for the life of his teacher, the octopus.
Yeah.
And it kind of relates to what you just said. I strongly recommend watching it. It's really surprising. It's sort of a natural experiment.
I mean, it's funny. We have two cats in our house, and every now and then my wife will say, "Isn't it odd that we just allow these beasts to wander through the house?"
Or they allow you to, yeah.
Or they allow us, yeah. They every night they decide not to kill us for some reason. But
cat is magical.
Yeah,
cat is magical.
It's a fascinating thing. I mean, the other thing that occurred to me, I mean, the more serious answer about sort of how to do that is. I think what I would have to go on is my memory, and sort of what I would imagine doing is, if you've sort of heard those kind of sci-fi, or I guess in Elon Musk's mind, not sci-fi thing where, our brains are downloaded into an AI and then that AI just goes on being us. I would imagine sort of building that for myself, and not necessarily in a technological sense, but in a mental, in my headspace sense. I would try to think about all the people that I cared about that brought joy to me, that are now gone, in this scenario. I would imagine, I would sort of make sort of scrapbooks of everything I remember about them and how they were. And then I would probably have a lot of internal conversations with them. I would probably imagine talking to them and imagine them reacting in the ways that were uniquely them, and sharing.
Are there any things you just said? I'm sort of super attuned to things and places right now, and so I'm curious. You mentioned a scrapbook, and are there other things that you'd want to surround yourself with to have those memories, or places that you'd want to go, even though you were all by yourself, to visit with your memories?
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's that idea of triggers, right? And I think physical places is a big one, certainly. And I think it would be fun to like find restaurants, or something, going with the earlier theme, or and then music too. I mean, I think music doesn't always associate with individual people for me, but it can, and I think it's a wonderful trigger of memory. So I think that's sort of where I would go if I really had kind of no people, but some documented memories, some internal memories, and that's what I would build.
Mhm.
Agnes, what about you?
Yeah, definitely lonely if there are no people, because we are hardwired in so many ways.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I mean.
All right. I did not know people liked people. I didn't know. This is new to me, Agnes. I thought everyone described people the way I hate people. Okay, keep going.
There were other kinds of people before Homo sapiens, right? And they didn't survive because they didn't have this, I don't know, the genetic mutation, whatever you call it, or the inspiration, or the calling, or the just like survival strategy. And we are here, and that's still with us. And this is why we are, even if we are left at a lonely island. So maybe the first thing is like, oh, will I survive in terms of the food, shelter? But immediately would be the question. Is there anybody else? It's like, that's so essential for us. So that's number one. Yes, I will feel lonely. And the second is what I'm going to miss is honest feedback.
Interesting. Yeah.
Say more.
Because we are fooling ourselves all the time in our brains. I mean, we are lying to ourselves. Look at our behavior change, looking at how the people struggle with the New Year's resolutions. This is our nature. And of course, there is a long explanations why and how, and the same competition for the efficiency and the resources and everything. Like, it's kind of clear, but honest feedback is what drives the progress. It's what drives the people to become better. This is why we have friends. Friends give us honest feedback. We love them for exactly that. I'm going to miss it.
So
I'm going to
do sort of in replacement for that. Like, again, you're the only one there in the whole world. What would you do sort of, or what would help you not be lonely?
Artificial intelligence, but the real one, not this kind of a tiny things here and there, but like a conversational partner, because this is, I fully agree with Steve. We can have the conversations in our brains. So this is how the social influence works. It's not only real others, it's implied or imagined others. So that's fine. We have the functionality, we have upgrade comparing to the older generations, but still speaking out and listening that there's somebody saying, and this artificial intelligence says, well, you are repeating yourself way too often. I'm like, and this is what it can do, right? And this kind of gives me, so I have loops and I have echo chambers in my brain. So maybe I should just do something else.
And this really reminds me of an important topic, which is how much are we connected with ourselves, and how much are we conscious of ourselves, and ourselves being life itself, right? And strangely enough, during the pandemic, I had more time alone, and I found that the time spent alone was so effective for me to gain more self-knowledge, to gain more self-awareness, which enables me to show up with a more authentic self when I connect with others. And as a result, I connect more deeply with other people and actually felt less lonely. And not long ago, we had 2 studies that show loneliness during pandemic actually leveled off, one in US, one in UK, during the pandemic than before, which was very surprising for most people. And I think we really need to inquire both scientifically and more deeply, what does it mean to be alone, or how can you not feel lonely being alone, or whether the connection with oneself is a crucial piece when it comes to loneliness.
You made, I think this conversation in general, but also your point here, Ting, has made me remember, one of my favorite poets is Walt Whitman. And he had a song, number 51, Song of Myself. And it's totally worth reading all of his poetry, but he said, do I contradict myself? Very well. I contradict myself. I am large. I contain multitudes. And I think that's really interesting, right? How much do we even know of the multitudes inside of ourselves?
Yeah.
And that was written
living,
1800.
right?
So he was tapped into something and really thinking and sharing his ideas.
Yeah, if life experience can be reflected by the amount of consciousness and the amount of experience, and if we end up just mindlessly live because of all the busy things that we're chasing, we're even if we are connected with others, it might be another coping mechanism just to distract ourselves, right? So I think what we are going to continue with is to assume that we're not going to have other humans and try to think in that scenario. Can we actually make friends?
Let's start playing the game.
Have ourselves be our best friend. You have one human to kind of observe and appreciate, right? And so now we want you to pick two things to redesign. One thing would be something that you really treasure, and we give you some freedom to do that. It can be your cat, Steve, or it can be something else. But another thing will be randomly generated. What we will see in our second slot. We're gonna give you one more random object to.
So loneliness is the crisis. That's already picked. So for Agnes and Steve, go ahead and each of you can
give
pick
us
a number.
1
and 20, and just pull the piece of cardboard off the number and let's see what the thing is underneath it.
I'll take number 14.
Number 14. What is the deal?
Toilet paper again?
Yeah. This is the season for toilet paper.
12, please.
I feel like this show is sponsored by Charmin or something.
Oh, we didn't want to tell you. Post-its, which in a pinch.
And we have a bonus object. Nice.
So what? Can you remind me again? What are we doing with these things?
We're going to redesign it after we see the constraints. So you're going to pick two things, and you are going to target these things, redesign them for the purpose of feeling less lonely.
So we could pick any one of these or two of these things. We don't have to do toilet paper per se, but we could. But that's the challenge now. And how could it help us cope with the fact that we're the only person on the planet? Like how might we design a new product? That could do this. Now it's in a particular world. Are you going to have us pick a world, Ting, as well, or a content?
Corey, can we go to next? Okay, so let's do the random generator.
Oh, I see. We're going to randomize this.
Number 5. Oh, it's a different one. Okay, Corey is doing it. Yeah, that's right. I was generating on my mirror. It was 1. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so Corey, go ahead and pull off 1. What is it? You got to zoom in.
Little IoT. It's a time now, so you're not gonna have much IoT. Low
so
tech.
like in the next week, nobody else is on the planet. Wow. Okay, but it can have IoT, which means it can have sensors, it can have computing, it can have machine learning, it can have whatever we have today in it to help you. It's just not going to be able to communicate with anybody else because there's nobody else there. You're all alone. Okay, man. Okay, right.
So Steve, you're going to design something for Agnes. Agnes, you're going to design something for Steve. And you've heard what they kind of like, or what makes them feel less lonely, or what they wish to have. Yeah.
Tag team. Now, and you're just going to copy those constraints and things and crisis up to the top so we can remind ourselves what we're doing. I think it was what? Toilet paper, Post-it notes, and nightstand. Corey, are you going to bring those over?
Yeah, it would take a little bit of time. We are doing that.
And when the timer starts, you know, a good way to think about this. So Agnes, a good way to think about it is say, okay, Steve, what am I going to do for Steve? You come up with an idea name, a good concept for the new product. And it could be some intersection of the 2 or 3 products, or it could be one of those. And then type an idea, like maybe a sentence or 2 of your idea. Same thing with you, Steve. Okay, I think, are we ready to go? When's the timer going to start? Timer's going.
All right.
Brutally honest.
And I'm going to play too, just because I like playing. I'll try to do it for both of them. No, I'll try to do it for Ting. Okay. Two minutes, 18 seconds. And my Post-it note disappeared. Okay. Why are people so mean to me? 36 seconds. Oh, dang. Put your pencils down.
Ah,
All right.
typos.
Look at that. My Post-it note keeps disappearing. It's like somebody's like Goose Ex Machina or something like that. Okay, who's gonna go first to explain your idea? And maybe Corey, could you zoom in on the idea? You don't have to mess with mine. Just zoom in on theirs. Who's gonna go first? Steve, can you click outside of your Post-it so it's not gray?
Yeah, hold on.
Yeah.
I can do mine.
There we go. Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Agnes.
Yeah.
All right. So who's going to go first?
I can.
Agnes.
All right. So, falling friends. So you imagine Post-its, and I just went very easy, and you can do it now. So it's kind of makes sense. You make a Post-it, and then after some time, it just falls off. And if you have written random messages from nice friends and they invite you to dinner or they want to do something or they have a conversation, and you put those Post-its all over your living space on the ceiling, and they're falling at random times, and you just come in and, oh, there's a message from a friend. And this is how low tech it can go, and you can do it already today.
And who would be writing it?
Of course, the only person that there is. Of course,
okay.
if
you just imagine that you have these friends who write you messages. You write on their behalf.
That's the way to go when you are alone. I mean, otherwise you would be instructing some technology.
Frictional work.
Yeah, you can go more high tech. Then it's tech does it for you, but that's the same thing.
Agnes, I think you've reinvented holiday cards. which
I like the idea. Like the guy from 3M is probably very excited that you came up with an idea that would really use the sort of stickiness of 3M, which was the genius idea. Nice.
We tend to put our holiday cards on a ledge, and after a while, they start falling over, dropping down.
For the cats decide, yeah. Nice.
This is perfect. I love it.
Steve.
I really love it. So, Agnes, you said what you really want is feedback, and what you really miss is feedback. So I created Brutally Honest Siri, and you're the only person on earth, but you're going to keep talking, right? You're gonna have lots of great thoughts, because what else is there to do but have great thoughts and read and then have more thoughts. And so, but what you really want to know if these are good thoughts and what can you build with these thoughts. And so Siri is going to do tons of research kind of in the background and hear what you're saying. And it's going to rate you on originality and coherence and, all sorts of things like that. It's going to be really brutal. Siri will be embedded in your nightstand, but truly Siri will be everywhere. And so periodically and on demand, Siri will pop up and say, Agnes, you're repeating yourself, or Agnes, this is so 1990, that was invented back then. Agnes, I think you've actually come up with something useful.
Your brutal friend. I love it. What do you think of this? How do you do?
That's exactly what I want. So when can I order this?
You can have different personalities. I could imagine Sarah Silverman would be the perfect voice for this or something, or maybe Rodney Dangerfield or something if you're older. All right. Very good. All right, let's go to mine.
Okay, let's go to yours first.
All right. Mine, I just decided it's a robotic Post-it pad that can basically use e-ink that fades away. It's made of recycled leaves. And it's inspired by Walt Whitman's poem that I said, and I totally am going to now rip off and use Agnes's idea. It jumps around and it leaves messages from your friends that have passed away and that are gone, or they all left for another planet. Like, I fell and then you caught me. And then another time it jumps over somewhere else and it sticks up a post that says, remember that horse? I mean, all day long we were riding that horse, and these things over time though would fall back on the ground, and the Pop-A-Lot Post-it would go like stamp around and try to like collect up the Post-it leaves, and then it would use e-ink to create something new. So it would be kind of like a little circular economy of leaves. And Walt Whitman's poem, by the way, was from a book called Leaves of Grass.
Leaves of Grass. Right.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's totally Agnes. I'm stealing selfishly because I'm trying to solve it for both of you.
And I have an ad to
you covered my idea.
You're done.
This infinite word that's going to cover my idea. All right.
I also want to design something for others, and I think in order to kind of get feedback, you can also give input to Siri about your feeling and catch yourself in your automatic moments. And so you're gonna capture those moments, you're going to do some random pause, and then you're going to write down exactly how you feel, because Siri cannot actually all the time know how you feel. And the more that he gathers data on your feelings and what you are doing, the more he can actually give you some patterns and some criticisms. So that's the ad. And I actually have one homemade one here.
Oh, wow. Okay, wait.
With the Post-it.
Go back to full screen for a second so we can see what you're showing us.
So this one is my happy. So when I'm feeling positive, feeling good, I'm gonna put down sort of exactly how I feel and deposit it. And I do a little review at the end of the day to see what are the moments of positivity and when I
What do
feel
you call that product?
sad.
Is the name
I'd
of
be
it?
more mindful.
Siri.
I call it a momently.
All right.
Okay.
All right. So that's
So let's
round
go
one.
to the next stage. Yes.
Round one. Now what do we do, Ting?
Okay, now we're gonna assume that you really want to do this new solution, but there's potentially behavioral barrier, uptake, challenges of really using the product. So we would give you 2 minutes to ask each other some questions and figure out how to make sure that the medicine or the best solution is also being adhered to. We have 4 potential barriers. So I think so the Steve, your solution of the Siri, right? So maybe it's just so fun that Agnes wouldn't have any problem to actually adhere to using it.
Well, I guess the question, Agnes, is that, you know, where could it go wrong to the point that you're just like, you know, wanting to kind of strangle Siri and drop
Exactly.
Siri in the wastebasket and never hear from him or her again?
I think out of these 4, the B kind of falls off itself. Like, what's the social norm?
Yeah, we're not gonna have social norm today.
I am the norm.
And yeah, maybe the self-control. I mean, if I get like too mad at the honest feedback, like
I imagine you're human, and every now and then it would be nice to have some really uplifting, positive, you know, feedback. You know, that it might feel good. And if Siri were always too brutally honest, of course, brutally honest may mean you are wonderful all the time. So there is that possibility, right?
What if he's actually an amazing, perfect person?
Exactly.
This brutally honest thing would be like, I can't get any. There's no joke here.
No, tell me honestly. Honestly,
so interview each other about this. Yeah.
You have 1 minute left.
Oh.
So now it's kind of me looking at the solution that I proposed for you, and what could be the challenges that you would actually, would it really work for you?
I think the challenge would be the clutter on the floor, to be honest.
Would you care about clutter? Nobody's visiting you.
Nobody's visiting, but it would get annoying. I mean, that's an interesting question. Would you still be sort of fastidious and tidy if there was nobody there to see it?
Steve, are you fastidious?
In theory, not in practice.
Probably tidy though. Tidy is a nice word.
Yeah, no, I think I think that would be the only practical thing that comes to mind. Is I love the idea that they sort of gently fall like snowflakes from the ceiling periodically, but at some point it's almost like you want them to self-decompose or something.
Or it could be like a snow globe room, where the whole room flips back over, and then you just, you know, fall.
But he still need to write those notes, yeah. So there's definitely like effort needed to write up the notes.
Yeah, no. If I'm having to figure out how to write the notes for myself, that does get tricky.
Yeah, there's no habit of doing that.
Yeah, that would be hard. Right. Scheduling time.
Right, you have to put it on your calendar. Time to write a friend's note, to fake a friend's note. Okay, so time is up. Can you pick what's your, for each other, what's the biggest barrier?
So we need to pick for the other person or for themselves?
Yeah, for the other person. What's the?
I would say I would go for D. Like saying, oh, there is no place for the Post-its on my carpet, so no way.
And the effort of writing up the note.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure C is quite the right thing, but I think again, if Siri started to rub Agnes the wrong way, it might be harder to keep inviting her back into everyday life.
Yeah. I don't
You're
love
just
you
It's an
anymore.
interesting question about whether that theory would be a kind of a social norm, because it has a personality. And you might get annoyed with it. I wonder. I'd be torn between B and C, but this is your game, so which
Yeah,
which would you go for?
that's interesting. So Nicholas Christakis has done some work where he's introduced bots into social networks to shift social norms. So I mean that suggests that an AI can can create a social norm.
Yeah.
So all right, let's
In one
go.
of our earlier episodes, Mickey actually created multiple future selves to impose sort of some norm to be healthy, coming from all of his future self says, I want you to be healthy so that my future
It was
self
my
can
parallel
benefit.
world interpretation of the universe.
Yeah. Okay. So let's review one tactic from each of the. You want to go for norm or lack of self-control, Steve?
I'll
For
go
Agnes.
with norm. I'll go with norm.
Okay. Let's review. Uh-huh. So leveraging humor theater in overcoming barrier of taboo so that you can talk about norm. So what happened is norm is about expectations and not all expectations, even when they are updated, are being shared in time. So people oftentimes are stuck with the old expectations. So you kind of have to communicate with your Siri more frequently about what are the expectations. So and in order to talk about it, it shouldn't be frustrating, or it shouldn't be like you both feel like this is against the norm to even start talking about it. So you can
You don't
leveraging
feel
humor,
afraid of talking to the
theater,
Siri. Yeah.
and just saying, hey, by the way, I think your pressure of judging is a little bit too high now. Can you tune down a little bit, right? So being able to find a good communicative strategy that would leverage humor and theater might be one way to overcome the difficulty of communication to update the common beliefs. Okay, so in terms of habit,
Well, you
just
also
know
uncovered
that
debunking pluralistic ignorance. Do you want to
I
talk
don't
about
think we
that?
have time. I don't think we have time for it. Yeah. So let's cover one thing on habit. So in order for you to write up the note, you really need to be able to do it automatically in your daily routine. So ideally, it's a new routine that you don't have to remember. And what works is whenever it's a very consistent, stable cue, you're more likely to remember. And if you piggyback this new habit to an existing one, let's say every time after you use the toilet, you do 6 or 7 times a day, and you would write up on a toilet paper, or you put your post-it note right to that, or after you drink tea or water. So those are existing habits. And if you can say, whenever I do this, or whenever after I do this, I will write a note. So that
like
could
brushing
be
your teeth. If you could tie a new habit to something that you already built a habit around. Nice. Okay. I think we get it.
So 3 minutes, redesign, adapt your idea to incorporate also the behavioral uptake solution.
Yeah, and you can kind of copy and paste the post-it note and then riff on it, or you can start from scratch and say, how would you modify or tweak this? But it's all yours now. Oh, 2 minutes and 50 seconds. Wow. So how would we change this with science? And the duplicate button is my friend for this one, because I'm just going to go duplicate. 42 seconds. I don't want you to feel any pressure at all, but I mean, you're the only person on the planet at this point. I'm gonna stop it. Time's up. Put your pencil down. All right, what'd you guys do? Where are you? What is Corey doing? Why is he messing with my old drawings? Where are your new ideas, folks?
So I just wrote on the bottom of the other one.
Yep, that's good. Somebody click off it and tell us what you got. What you come up with.
So I can just talk to. I mean, largely what we talked about, which is in addition to giving you feedback, Agnes, Siri needs a feedback loop herself, so that it's not just constantly, being brutally honest with you, but learning just how much brutal honesty you appreciate. But the idea is it's not just an immediate feedback loop about like, you just hurt my feelings, kind of thing, or be tougher on me, Siri. But rather, there's an immediate feedback loop, but then there's sort of a longer term feedback loop. Let's say it's a monthly feedback loop to say, sort of, how has this feedback been working for you? Maybe it feels tough in the moment, but you feel like you're progressing as, the last human being on Earth. So it's an ability to sort of grow and really learn how best to be that brutally honest and supportive friend. And then the other thing that I just started to jot down before the timer hit was that maybe Siri might also just learn to be a companion who's not always so judgmental. That there may be times, I know you like that honesty that a friend gives you, but there may be times where you just want to hang out. And Siri will learn to do that too.
Great.
Brilliant.
So mine is on the new.
Over time. I remember that little robot dog, or no, it was the dinosaur that would like start out and not really know what to do, or maybe Furby. That's what it was. But over time it would like evolve a language. Maybe this could kind of evolve a more of a personality. I like your idea of it kind of immediate feedback and then like a week later, month later. My only tweak on that might be just sort of what if you could have some randomization function in there, because people are kind of weird and random. So it might be nice.
I worried about reinventing the performance review, which is certainly not. If there's one thing that I would bring into the next world, it would not be that.
We're going to do a 360 with you. Steve, what do you think about Steve? And Steve, how about you? Okay. Agnes, what do you do?
Oh, so again, just as was suggested by the science, so you anchor it to something that happens regularly. And I was just thinking washing the hands. So I think that's kind of also many times a day we do it. And so every time after washing the hand, you can write a few notes or one note and post it somewhere. And then more logical possibly is 1 for 1. So one falls, you have it, you have that event, so the dinner or whatever. And then you kind of, because that's a trigger for you. It fell, oh, this one, or the 2, and then you write 2 ones and place it somewhere else. So very, very basic anchoring to the routine that is gonna happen one way or the other. So both of those.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah, it sort of, the last one kind of deals with the floor clutter problem too.
Yeah.
You pick it up, you write a new one.
Yep.
The cycle of whatever that is. Life
cycle of post-it notes for the human on the planet.
I was reading through my Twitter feed as sort of a doom scroll last night, and one of my favorite writers, Nick Harkaway from the UK, said that he found a post-it note on his desk that just said tactile, and he keeps seeing it, and it makes him super happy because it just says tactile. He doesn't know when he wrote it, but then he feels sad because he's like, what did I mean? I don't remember what I meant by tactile. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
It's sort of like Rosebud.
And the
Rosebud.
other human behavioral science finding is that if you write a note to your future self, and pre-commit to something, right, it can actually help you make a more rational decision when you're in your hot-headed moment.
Cold state.
Yeah. So
I want to tell you
a lot
mine
to think
quick,
about.
just because I figured I would do it too. So I just kept in this mode of sketching. So if you could zoom in a little bit more, there's my original one on the left, but then the new edition is called Hide and Seek. And the new edition is that I decided to take that social norm about theater and improv and actually breaking down that kind of thing so you got better feedback. So occasionally the robot hopping pop-a-lot post-it note thing that is cluttering things, they would go hide under the couch, or they would be like laying in wait, because it'd be like kind of like, you went to go to sit down and suddenly it jumps out and it flutters a whole leaves. It just does a confetti bomb. And I was thinking about the Indian festival, and I remember at Carnegie Mellon there was a few days of the year where everybody from India were just throwing crazy bombs of color at each other, and they're covered head to toe with like psychedelic. I don't know if you know what this festival is, but can't remember the name of it. But it's so delightful because it's kind of like fun and playful, but it's like, you're gonna have to clean up after that. But the whole campus has been like bombed with like fun, playful, fluorescent colors. All right.
Well, it's coming to the end. Yeah.
Wow, we're wrapping up on time, I think.
Absolutely. Steve, Agnes, thank you for being so authentic, so playful, and so wonderful just as who you are. If you have any last remark, you can share. Mickey and I would like to remind everyone with your demonstration. Oh, okay. You do have a last remark.
What?
And it's what's that?
So this one, it writes anywhere. So it's like a wide range of temperature in zero gravity, and you can write it upside down. So have you had this experience? You stand at the board and there is a paper and you want to write and it stops writing. So,
but that was invented for astronauts, right? Is that what the idea was?
Yeah. Yes. So I'm ready for whatever happens. So I'm not going to be.
Why did you show that to us at this moment? Because I think it's kind of fascinating.
Yes, there are two reasons. Because I had a birthday yesterday, and that was a present from my wife. And obviously, there is some linkage. Linkage to. Thank you, to how I see myself and the universe, and also the conversation today is that loneliness, we can experience it even being surrounded with people, but still how we can imagine ourselves being in the futuristic world where we are lonely. And I think this image with the man and the pencil, and it's kind of just comes together in this whole story. And I was like just willing to show that, yeah, we are who we are. And then we have the magnificent powers of choosing who we want to be.
And we can write Post-its on the ceiling.
Yeah, and that's exactly for the.
In the future, there are only going to be ceilings, by the way. So.
Low ceiling.
Steve, any last word?
No, I hope we keep the people. Let's prefer the planet with lots of people on it. Thank you.
Next episode, we'll have 2,000 billion people. We're just going to go the other way.
Thank you. This was wonderful. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thanks
so
for
much.
playing.
All right, thank you.
Mickey, that was a fun time. I want to thank you for being such a wonderful co-host. I'm very grateful to Katya and Corey, who did amazing amount of work behind the show. We appreciate your spending time with us today, and remember, science and design is for everyone. And this show is for you. So do let us know what interests you, how we can improve on. We are all growth mindset. So don't hesitate to co-create with us, and also submit your ideas if you have to the not just a thing .gameshow@gmail.com.
Yeah, please submit your ideas. If you watching this, and you're sort of watching it Saturday morning or Sunday morning or something like that, please think about it. See if you can come up with a better one and submit it. And next week, yours might be the winner, and we'll talk about it. It'll be fun.
So for next week, Mickey, this past Giving Tuesday, I was really wondering if we could give something that is more intangible but really valuable to people's life instead of money. And I kept, wondering about the invisible and intangible kind. Like, why don't we have a bank account of unconditional love, of gratitude, of trust, or trustworthiness? Or how do we even make it visible? How do we make them count without them being so easily countable, right? Because we're so biased to anything that's measurable. So can we, in the next week, maybe dive into this theme and see how the things around us at least can help us make these intangible but extremely sort of beneficial factors that plays a crucial role for our well-being, even like quality of connection, right? And even Agnes talk about like honest feedback. What is that sensation that generates, or what is that gain that is actually just not monetary in monetary terms? So how can we have our things support us in that journey as well?
I like this. I mean, I think the timing is really, really great. We just had Giving Tuesday, and it would be really interesting to think, because we will be, thinking about how can we give back in the next few weeks, just because of the holidays in some parts of the world. But also, I think it's just a good thing to think about how giving of yourself actually is almost selfish to some extent, because it feels good to give, and that feeling lasts longer. But I love this notion of the intangible, or almost the ineffable, of what is it that it's not money. It's not a thing that you bought to amplify consumer culture. What could we do? So that'll be next week. That
would be next week. See you next week. Thank you so much for coming.